There was a thing, I thought somebody had instructions on how to fix it. Like it was broken on Zoom's side.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it now.
Looks like we're live.
Yeah, so we are apparently live, but so yeah, here we are at the Node.js tooling group meeting, April 17th, 2020. Yeah, so we have, but first, actually, if I'm looking at this minutes, it says the first thing we're supposed to do is announcements. So does anybody have any announcements?
I have the.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I did end up rating that. I don't know if I mentioned it in our last meeting, but I did end up rating that document on release policies for open source libraries. I'll link to it in the tooling, but I think it's worth a read.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, I don't have any announcements myself, but I think this is the most people we've ever had at this meeting, which is awesome. But anyhow, so if there are no more announcements, then I'll move on to the list. And the first thing I want to do is the Vladimir thing, and I want to find the link to it.
I shared it in the first item of the agenda, issue number 63.
Ah, yeah, FS hooks. So I just want to throw this into the minutes. So there's this audit hooks and FS hooks. So all right, so I don't even remember where I saw this. Maybe was it on Twitter or something? And I was like, hey, that sounds strangely like something we've been kicking around for a while with this FS hooks. And it sounds like audit hooks is, I'll let you talk about it, but it sounds similar in some ways. So, and the security working group is doing that. And so I think this is like Vlad's thing. So maybe I wonder if you could talk about it a little bit.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the ping. I was not aware of this initiative on the tooling working group side. So basically, around September last year, Microsoft pinged us and they asked us about some kind of auditing hooks in Node.js, similar to features they rolled in Python last year. So I digged a bit into it and it actually makes sense. It's basically a feature that enables people to register hooks and to listen to them for certain events. So the first thing I was thinking was providing such hooks for syscalls, so namely file access, network access, or basically the whole Node.js API. Also, I have to admit I'm working for a security company, and hooking into the eval method is actually impossible on userland. And I plan on providing a hook for such JavaScript primitives as eval or the function constructor. So I started to dig into that and to work on a POC. And then at this point, Christopher, you pinged me and said, hey, we are doing the same thing in the tooling working group. So I checked the issue on the current repo. And I had a very interesting call with Brian 2 days ago about that topic. And we reached to a conclusion that right now, there are a lot of hooks being added to Node.js, whether they are async hook, module loading hooks, audit hooks, FS hooks, or I even see that issue number 48 is spawn and spawn sync hook. And at this point, the question would be, should we have a unified interface for Node.js, for instrumenting Node.js and listening to what's happening into a Node.js process, whether this is for security, performance, or for instance, the use case of FS hooks that are, if I can summarize them, as I don't hesitate to interrupt me, if I can summarize, can we make FS lie and say whatever we want it to say when we need to do it? I think that's how you, Brian, explained it to me.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the use cases, yeah.
Basically doing something a bit like what Java has with Java Agent, which is a flag you pass to the JVM when you start it, and where you can register everything you need for instrumentation. The idea would be to stop having thousands of people stepping on each other's toes and patching the same functions, because anyone who has done Node.js instrumentation knows that their worst and best enemies are other people doing Node.js instrumentation. I had to release my own agent this week because an APM vendor is patching the same thing as I do, but in a non-compatible way. So it broke my customer's production because we—
It wasn't us, was it?
Yes, it was you. No big deal. I mean, it happens all the time. And that's the thing. Maybe we should start to have guidelines and a unified interface for everyone to work on that. And Stefan seemed really interested on that, given he's an APM expert on Node.js too. So that's it for the intro. I talked a lot. Maybe I should leave other people speak a bit.
No, that was a really good rundown of what, you know, what that's all about. But I mean, it does sound like, so this effort would, so what I want to understand is, I mean, the way you're describing it, it seems pretty broad. It seems like actually quite a bit of work that cuts, it's cross-cutting. It's everywhere. And so is this something like you are trying to knock out yourself, or what?
So I have started the work on Audit Hook, and I plan to have them as my main open source contribution for 2020. Now that we've merged the async local storage API, I can spend a bit of time on Audit Hooks. And actually, I agree, it's pretty big. And I think we can start small. We can start with a POC on FS, because there are needs there, maybe on child process and eval. And given these three scopes, we probably could have something that is reachable. I don't know when, because I don't know how much time I can dedicate to that in the next quarters. I just know for the current quarter, I hope to have a FS POC by the end of June. And that's something we can iterate upon. What I'm mostly worried is introducing new layers of complexity in Node, where other people have needs that are not the same as I do, and being like, hey, yeah, but I did that, and it doesn't cover your use case, but it covers mine. And at the end of the day, nobody is happy.
Okay. You said there are other efforts, like, so besides this one, are there other people who are trying to add stuff like this that you've reached out to, and you're like, hey, maybe we should all work together on this unified way to do things? Or
so actually, Brian is the first one I reached 2 days ago, and that's why I tweeted about that, to see if other people were onto that. From the security working group perspective, everyone is pretty aligned on the use case on that, and I did not get any knowledge about initiative. I think Stefan knows about a couple other tracing related initiatives, right?
Yeah, but I'm responsible for the diagnostics channel, which hasn't really had any progress for a while because I haven't had time for it. But that was a Microsoft initiative that was shown at one of the diagnostics working group summits maybe a year or so ago. and that was kind of meant to be just a general channel for anything to just push like events about what it's doing. So that their target was like not just core but also userland, and hopefully producing basically just a general metadata channel that you can get all the trace information you want out of it, with some structural correlation. So hopefully no patching would actually be needed for like basic APM stuff.
And so you said this isn't going anywhere, or?
Yeah, I just haven't had any time for it.
Okay.
So yeah, I would like to get back to it at some point, but yeah, it had similar challenges to. It's in a similar space as trace events, but less focused on the like low level diagnostic stuff and more general purpose, but still has a lot of the same challenges in that it's basically a fire hose of data. So it has to have a bunch of controls to not send stuff that's not being listened to. Otherwise, like it's expensive to be building up all of this data all the time if you're not listening to it.
All right. And so is this something you think would consume, or like, I don't know, consume something else? Or do you think maybe there would be, I don't know, if the idea is to try to come to one mind about how to pull this off, do you think it might like implement an interface that's defined, like maybe there's this like hooks interface that if somebody needs to add a hook to Node, are these diagnostic or metadata events, could those like implement that or consume some other lower level thing? I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to see if there's like, if this is something that you would be able to, if you had the inclination and resources to work with Vlad and or Brian or whomever else.
Yeah, so the intent was for it to have basically just generic interface, and it just outputs a stream of events. On its own, it's not necessarily structural, but it would have like metadata included in it that you could like reconstruct structure from it potentially. But yeah, the hope was just to have like generic, like basically bags of data that we'd probably want to have some amount of like basic specification of like a thing should have a type string or something like that to identify it. But you would probably want to have some amount of data that's just like not really universal spec, because not everything is going to have the same thing. Like you might want to track like an HTTP request, you want to know the host, but file system is not going to have a host. It's going to have the path on your disk somewhere. So data is going to vary a bit.
Right. I mean, it sounds like, so there's kind of two main use cases. Well, maybe more than two, but one of these is we want to there's like, I don't know about the terminology, but a listener. So if in event listeners we have event emitters, we have a listener. All a listener does, it listens for an event, and it's a void function, right? It receives, it has a context. It receives whatever arguments come with the event, and you can do whatever you can do with those in there. But it doesn't like act like again, excuse the term, middleware, like in middleware, like in Express, where it takes a thing and it mutates that thing and then it returns a new thing or what have you. And so there's the instrumentation end, where it's just more of a listener, and we just want to take this, it's read only, right? Kind of, you could I'm just trying to split it up into two different things.
I actually think, though, you can implement what you're talking about, because Express middleware does not return the request and response, right? You just mutate it. You can do the same thing with your event context, right? So the event context is just passed to the next event handler. So if you have a event handler registered before the final one, you can just modify the input, right? So if we were thinking about FS hooks and it was like read file and you gave it and path was on the context, if you just like swapped out the path, the next event would just receive the newly modified context, which I think implements. So we could, in theory, in that way, implement it, I think, on top of it as just a mutating thing. That said, that can get really confusing in like a real world application, right? Because if somebody mutates it before you and some timing with the registration of the hooks happens different than you expected, it will obviously totally break your application. So
yeah, I would strongly recommend against mutation of objects if it's like a shared channel, just because like you're going to run into the same problem that APMs have of like two different things are going to mutate the same thing and not know they're doing it.
I will tell you horror stories about Express apps that I've seen. Trust me, there's some bad things that you can do when you have this sort of API.
Yeah.
Right,
In the context of a framework, it's a little more controlled because like you can say like follow this interface and it should mostly work, but like across the entirety of Node, having like one unified channel for everything, I feel like you'd need to be a bit careful about what you let the users do.
I mean, that could be something that is decided upon registration. You could register, you could have two registration paths for your listener, or right now in my prototype, it's listeners, but you could have a path where it's read only and you get a string and you can mutate the string as much as you want. Nobody will care about that. And still in the FS example, or you could register in a path where only one listener is allowed, and then you are passed a URL object. You can mutate as much as you want, and that will be rebuilt into a path before going to libuv. But in that case, we would limit the number of people of chunk of code who have the right to mutate the input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at, where it's like, well, if we have these security concerns or what have you, I mean, there's certain things we may want to disallow with these hooks. Isn't that part of the point? So, yeah.
I also think with FS hooks, one thing that will be asked very quickly is, how do I do an asynchronous operation inside my hook, right? So other contexts like the fire hose of metadata on the tracing stuff, maybe not, right? Like just shove it off and buffer it, and then in the background you process it asynchronously. But in FS hooks, sorry, I'm outside, there's cars. In FS hooks, like a very common thing would be, look at the file system, see if a file path that you want to actually modify the read to read from exists before doing it, right? Or some operation like that. And if you have that, you're going to need asynchronous hooks, right? And I think that's like a pretty different use case than a performance critical like tracing event or a APM implementation.
I guess it depends. I guess what we are getting to is that you need to know what your hook will do when you register it, so you can register based on its need. For instance, I totally agree, some hooks will need to be asynchronous. And in my own use case, I don't need them to be asynchronous, but some will need to. But they will only make sense on asynchronous calls. You should not call an asynchronous hook on synchronous calls. So I guess where we are getting at is we need a grammar, or at least a concern or authorization mode system when registering a hook to say in advance, hey, this hook will act like that, so please do this. And we could say that failing that requiring the right things would just mean that your hook won't make sense. Like you forgot to register your hook as asynchronous, nobody will wait for the asynchronous functions to be over or the expose promise to be resolved, and that's on you. Would that make sense, Wes?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I
Awesome.
forgot. I can't just rely on visuals.
So what I can offer as a course of action is I can move forward with my audit hook prototype, taking this constraint and other use case in account, and ping the issue regularly to make sure that I'm not building something that does not fit other people use case. And that the best effort I can do is, I mean, like say that I will spend time on that. Let me know if there is anything else we can do to make that happen, or if someone wants to review or ping me or pair program on that. Side note, I'm trying to live stream the code on that because I'm trying to show to people that it's not that hard to contribute to the core. So feel free also to come and mock me in the comments on the Twitch stream.
Do you got a link for that Twitch stream?
Yeah, I will. Let me find it back. Where can I put it? Can I put it?
You can just throw it in the minutes.
I will.
Okay.
We will all like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Yeah.
I mean, only one video and already 20 followers. I feel like a YouTube star or Twitch star already.
Yeah. All right. So Brian, then what does this mean for FS hooks?
So as long as the audit hooks implementation actually includes a way to do some, if not all, the things that we mentioned in terms of use cases for FS hooks, then there's no need to move forward with a separate FS hooks implementation. So I guess the main thing that means is providing one, like a way of blocking calls or mutating arguments, that kind of thing, but also providing completely different return values. So if those things are able to be done, then that covers pretty much all the use cases as far as I can tell. So yeah, that's kind of what that means for FS hooks, I think.
Sweet.
Awesome. I'm usually coding on Monday evenings, and I will try to prototype that next Monday then.
What's your time zone?
So I'm in France, so I try to do that around 8 p.m. on Mondays, which is a 9-hour time difference with Pacific time, so 11 a.m. Pacific time, I would say. And I don't know anything about regarding East Coast story, maybe 7 or 6 hour time difference. It's basically end of the morning or mid-afternoon for the Americas.
All right. And Canadians.
And yeah, sorry. Sorry, Tim Horton. Also, I upload everything on YouTube after that. So I say I do that, but I did this only once for now. So don't get me as a pro streamer, but I upload everything on YouTube after that. So you can watch the VOD if you want.
All right. Okay, so is there anything more on this topic? No. All right. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot for having me. I think it's time for me to go to bed. So have a nice meeting, team. See you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Okay, so right. What has happened? So has anything happened here? Just go down the list. chmod-r. Probably not.
Guy might try to get involved there, is what I said last time in our last meeting.
Okay. Still might try to get involved.
Yeah, it's just been a crazy week.
Why is that? I don't know. Is that something happened I don't know about? Feel free to send me an email because I did Mictor-R originally, so I'm happy to help as best I can. I'm usually pretty busy, but really willing to use my time as I can to help people.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, Ben. Yeah, I'll try to sync up with you for sure.
Okay. Next one would be this hot module reloading in core. I haven't been paying attention to any of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's just one of those things that I think needs to happen. But I mean, certainly I have other things I have to be doing. But definitely need it. Does anybody know anything else about this particular thing? Yeah.
Only loosely related, but just want to mention that in it looks like 14.0, the ES module experimental modules loader warning is going to be gone from runtime anyways. Documentation, it'll still be labeled as experimental, but using ES modules won't produce a warning anymore. So I don't know what that means for this proposal, if that possibly makes it more difficult.
Yeah, not that I mean, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know enough about that implementation to say whether or not adding something like this would like somehow break things. So
if I remember correctly, isn't this breaking like test watch mode for a bunch of things?
So the lack of it breaks things like module level mocking. You know, if you want to, watch mode would need to like do something like load the, like, you know, spawn a process or something like that. And you know, these, you can work around it, but what you can't do is, I mean, it's called hot module. Maybe it really needs to be more specific, because what we need is the ability to delete a module from the cache, just like you would go delete require.cache and then some module ID, because I mean, we can do these other things to work around them, but you're going to leak memory unless we can remove things from the cache. And if that's breaking anything, it's breaking the spec. But I don't know if that would be, I mean, I'm not on the modules team. I don't know if that would be considered something that would also be breaking a stable API, because it doesn't, I mean, you know what I mean? Is that a breaking change?
Well,
I don't know.
Well, my point there was more that it's still not stable. So if that needs to go in, that's fine. It will just get a lot more attention, just like it did when they said it's not flagged anymore, right? So that should, in theory, give another boost in people well, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know, but people asking for it, which brings more attention to it, which in theory could mean somebody comes in and actually like is willing to spend the time to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I expect to see that sort of thing coming my way.
My guess is that it would kind of be a double-edged sword. Like, this may get more people's attention, you know, that want the feature, but it'll also, I kind of expect that like the review process would have more scrutiny.
I mean, it might cause a lot of problems for test, you know, runner maintainers, because now everybody would come in and be like, look, it's not even complaining to me. I thought this should just work. And it's like, well, no, it's still experimental. Like, you can't run that watcher and have it replace, you know, in place, or you can't use knock on that, or whatever that knock, that's the HTTP one, right? Whatever the mock require or whatever those are, right? I mean,
yeah, I think for the sake of just keeping track of the discussion, I think we should rename it to unloading modules on ESM.
Yeah, I think
because
you're
that's
right.
yeah, that's the
I mean, unless somebody wanted to use that issue as the like where we point everyone when they come in and complain about these things, because I think an end user is not going to really understand the subtlety between unload and hot module replacement. I think they might feel more comfortable saying, "Oh, look, hot module replacement of modules. That's what I wanted. Yeah, yeah. Who's working on it? Oh, nobody. Oh, maybe I could do it." Right? Like the incentivization of somebody coming in to actually get the work done is I think the goal, right?
So also, I think we're actually talking about two different issues here. One issue is deleting from the cache, so unloading a module. And the other issue that has been mentioned is, I guess, kind of like proxy choir, like mocking, replacing a export from a module. I think that's something that's currently missing, unless I'm missing something.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I see there's like a slight. So instead of actually removing the module, you actually like change one of the exports. And I don't know if that's.
Well, no, what I was more talking about is, let's say, the module's already unloaded, and now I want to load this module, but I want to provide a mock FS to it. So when that module does its thing, so when I load that module again, I want to give it a fake file system so that I can do testing without dealing with the real file system.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess fake dependency injection, I don't know, the best I can point to is in the common JS world would be proxy choir, where you can say, this is what this module should use for FS.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know how that would work. And I don't know if that is like a separate thing. It might be, whatever it is, it might be just, we might be able to accomplish it with what we have, but I don't know for sure.
I think that, yes, something Vladimir was working on is similar to that. Like I saw a talk from him on Node.js Interactive on just like hijacking the module loader in ASM and like returning something else, right? So similar to proxy choir of sorts, but like really on the core.
Yeah, I mean, is that something you could use these loader hooks for or whatever?
Right, but the difference is these are traditionally being done in process, and the loader hook has to be registered at startup, right? So I think there's I mean, which is fine. I mean, I think that's probably a better way, but like that's just not the way it's being done. So as soon as these existing ecosystems suddenly are no longer working, that's sort of the problem, right?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe this is two distinct issues. Yeah. I feel like I want to get. Wait, is anybody here on the modules team? No.
I'm not an active member, but I'm not a voting member, but I do join all the meetings.
Okay.
That's part of the reason why I knew about the removal of that warning in 14.0.
Right. Yeah, I kind of want to get maybe somebody from there's the guy who wrote Rewire Mock, and I think he maintains proxy choir now. or something like that. Yeah, and I think he would be able to explain a little bit more about what exactly he thinks he would need, because I don't know enough about how it works under the hood. Anyway, so you know what I'll do? I'll just make a note to like reach out and see if I can get him in this meeting, or maybe dump something in an issue. Okay. All right. So yeah. Anything else on this one? What time is it? Okay, we got 20 minutes. Yeah. Anything else on this reloading or unloading or what have you? And Ray just pasted some sort of PDF. I don't know what that is.
It's the loader hooks presentation from Vlad I mentioned.
Okay. I'll just put that.
Yeah, we can put it on the notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me do it. Yeah.
Okay. So spawn sync spawn hooks. Is this another thing that would fall into this async hooks basket?
Well, into the audit hooks basket, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I mean,
audit hooks.
Yeah, it really seems like a very similar thing.
Well, with one potential exception is that, at least for the purpose that it was proposed, this requires manipulation. So basically right now I have a user space module that patches spawn and spawn sync. And the reason I'm doing that is to essentially forcefully inject options into the node options environment of child processes. That's basically the way that NYC gets itself loaded into child processes, even in the case where, for example, if some of your code starts with a clear process.env, this will re-inject the code that loads NYC. So the fact that this needs to manipulate might be different from the FS hooks.
Right. I mean, it sounded to me like that stuff, like that was definitely like a thing that he wanted to do. So, I mean, if that audit hook stuff can, manipulate, and it should, because you're right, doesn't FS hooks need to be able to lie, right? So do you think if that's true, then this would fall into the bucket, right?
Yes, probably.
Okay. 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 I think we then probably just need to make sure that Vlad is aware of what we're trying to do with this one. So maybe just somebody send him that link. He cares. Okay. Anything else on the spawn sync, hooking spawn sync stuff? Okay, so maybe we can rename this particular issue 42 to something like unified process exiting event. Do you think does that make sense? I mean, from what I understand, it's not actually possible to do this, because there are situations where like a certain signal would just, I don't know. It sounded to me like it wasn't entirely possible, but there's still quite a few bases we could cover.
Correct. So if you do sig kill, for example,
Right, sig
that
kill.
the kernel basically kills your process, and that's the end of that.
Right.
I wouldn't say everything except sig kill. Sig kill is definitely a big example. Thank you.
Almost everything except sig kill and something
Abort,
else.
core dumps.
Core dumps, right?
Most things we can't cover fall under the category of like a process level crash, like C/C++ crash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and that's already the case of like we have this program signal exit that's used by a lot of things in the ecosystem, and it has those same constraints.
Signal exit, is that, how is that spelled? Is it one word or a dash? Or
Signal dash exit.
okay. So do you think then it would essentially be whatever signal exit does, and basically take what it does and then put that in the core?
I think it would provide value. I think this kind of stems from when I was working on NYC years and years ago. It was surprising that process.exit didn't catch nearly as many events as you need it to if you're writing tooling that writes on exit. So signal exit kind of combined process.exit and as many signals as it could potentially listen for. So having something that just did that would be nice.
Okay. Anything else on this one? I'm not sure how to move it forward, other than it seems like it might just need somebody to send a PR.
Yeah, I mean, signal exits, like, I mean, it's downloaded 15 million times a week. It's pretty tried and true. So you probably crib it. You could at least take the test suite from it. It would probably be better to do it at a lower level in Node since you're able to.
Oh God, that's got to be quite the test suite. Who's maintaining this?
No one. Well, I guess me and Isaac.
Yeah.
Oh, we're screwed. Okay. All right.
But didn't someone comment on it, like saying that we might risk ending in that XKCD situation where, oh, we have 13 standards, let's unify them, and then we went up with 14 standards. But anyways,
Right.
yeah. I think
so now we have like process.exit, signal.handlers, and then this thing, which is some combination of the two. So like
and before exit as well.
Well, wait. Report, the diagnostic report can dump on a fatal. So like error from C++. So it will write. So it is possible to hook into something there, right? I mean, it's all in C.
Well, I'm guessing it can hook to like a C++ exception. But for example, if your C++ code caused a segmentation fault, that's the end of the process. I'm pretty sure your code wouldn't run.
No, your code wouldn't run, but it would still dump the report. And so, yeah, I think you're probably right, though. I mean, there's just nothing you can really do unless you write it in C++, maybe. That'd be interesting.
it would be nice it would just be nice to have something that's like on any exit event, let me do a synchronous hook to just dump exactly the same use case as diagnostic report, dumping a coverage report or dumping I don't know, any report you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I guess my big reason for wanting to see this is to be able to do it without admittedly ugly manipulations of the Node.js environment. I might be mixing up with another module, but I'm pretty sure if you look at the code to signal exit, it basically says this code is evil, get used to it.
Is the use case here for the current process or for a child process? So would this API be process on, or would it be like, the result of child process spawn?
This would be process on, I believe.
Okay.
Yes. So basically that, like, for example, with NYC, we use signal exit to essentially take the coverage variable, which is part of the current process's global scope, and write that to a JSON file. So in a lot of cases, it would need access to the current global scope.
Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, am I right that this essentially just needs a PR?
Yeah, I think it needs a PR and like some design. Like I could imagine it just being something like processed it on fatal or something, or dot on. Yeah, just something exactly like exit with that hooks into whatever the heck diagnostic reports is hooking into, maybe.
Maybe terminate instead of fatal, because the fatal errors are the ones we can't capture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, next is, we got 8 minutes. Source map stuff, anything on this front?
No real updates, just I'm going to work on it soon.
Okay. Anybody else on that topic? Okay. Argument parsing, what happened here? I don't even know.
Ben, did you make any progress?
I made no progress, but I think I like our roughed out approach. So I don't know, maybe we should make a branch.
Yeah.
Are you starting to have a little more headroom, Roy?
Yeah, I think, I'm a little bit on the same boat as Darcy, but maybe I can hack something this weekend. So I might.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you get a branch going, I'd happily kind of noodle on it a bit. I think I have a free Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm
cool.
don't have a busy social calendar right now.
Yeah.
If you guys are dragging your feet, I may be able to help as well in like a couple weeks. I'm working on Mocha stuff, so when that wraps up, yeah, I can probably do at least something from this list. I
Awesome.
hope. So, all right. Is that it? Is there anything else? Does anybody have anything they wanna show and tell or anything like that? Anything you want to bring up?
Oh man, I have something cool, but I don't know if it's completely tooling working group related. Let me show. I'm pasting a link. It is related to releases. Pasting. So I've been working on this thing for a while called Release Please, which is like a kind of automates your release process based on a release PR that's always maintained. Now you can add a label to it and get a pre-release. So without even typing npm, you can just put a label that says give me a pre-release and get a pre-release of a library. So I'll do this sometimes if I want to test a feature with people but not actually release the library yet. So
awesome.
I thought that was cool. I just got that working.
Nice.
So now it uses npm and like a cloud function behind the scenes, but for most of my day-to-day maintenance, I don't actually have to touch them.
I'm still waiting on the GitHub Action version of this.
So yeah, I'm going to be working on that this quarter. Like I think we have a plan. Like I need to start talking to. I need to figure out how we release it to people without like PII related concerns and stuff. But like, I think it might be the main thing I work on this quarter. Sorry it's taking so long. But.
Oh no, trust me, no worries. I said I would help with some of the stuff and have not had a chance either. So yeah.
So related to this release, please, I actually, since I know we have a couple of NPM folks on here, any possibility of getting a couple of, I guess you would call it classes or roles of people that can be added to packages? So for example, if I were to use this bot on all my packages, I'd like to make it so my account isn't even allowed to publish, but I can't remove my own account because I still need to be able to go on the website and administer it. Don't know if this is possible, but it would be very nice if users could be added to packages with, you know, an administrator role or a publisher role. That way there, you know, you could basically, the only account that could publish would be the bot. And then other accounts on there would just be administrative, just in case.
Yeah, I think the most likely thing there, Corey, we've talked about like stage publishes and workflows there, and out of that conversation came potentially the idea of like scoped auth tokens, which would have specific rights. How that actually nets out and what that looks like might change, but I think that's probably the most likely way that we would roll out that kind of capability. Would that like solve for what you're asking? So it wouldn't be like user, you don't want to, you'd still have a user account associated with the auth token.
So I may have misunderstood. I think I saw that RFC on the NPM. And the thing that kind of concerned me is it kind of sounded like basically you create an auth hook and that auth hook would be a publisher hook. So essentially I would somehow have to swap hooks locally, and I guess my idea
you put that in the bot. Like the thing is, like you would provide that token to your CI, right? Like the bot.
Well, I guess my point is that would work if everything I do is going through a bot. But then, like, if I have my own like private package that's not using a bot where I have to publish from my own account, then
So
to create it.
If I recall correctly, the scope would be like this token can publish this specific package. Is that's how y'all were thinking of it, NPM folks? Darcy, I guess is.
Yeah, and we don't have an RC for this specifically. It was kind of rolled up into that, and so like we probably the key takeaway here is to maybe take this kind of discussion offline or like create an actual RFC for it if it's something that we want to support. But I think that there is probably some capability that we can create or add to the auth tokens, and that's probably the fastest way forward versus creating a new type of user permission. That I guess that's what I'm saying is like if we wanted to potentially roll that out sooner than later, it would probably come in the form of scoped auth tokens, scoped permissioned auth tokens versus net new user scoped users. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And I'll try and take another look at that RFC. And if I have more questions, then I'll bring it up on Slack.
Yeah, we should have a subset, create a new RC that is a subset for that specifically. And it's very much a registry specific ask. So what I could say is like, if you want to use if you're asking for something specific there, I think a good model or example would be like GitHub scoped auth tokens, the way that they, you can define exactly what that auth token has. That's probably something similar to like what we should and probably will and could implement. So.
All right. Well, I think our time is about up. It is up. So, yeah.
Could you say that we have to delay a conversation about potentially promise resolve after at some point?
Next time.
Yeah, needs to be put in the agenda.
I will.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to put it in the agenda, so I will try and do that this weekend.
Yes. Tag stuff, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Have a good
everyone.
weekend.
All right, see everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.